my name's Steve. I work as a lean and agile consultant. As you're well aware, today I'm going to talk about spaghetti. So I'll start off. Just who's here familiar with spaghetti westerns? Is that what got you in here? No? All right. So for those who aren't familiar with spaghetti westerns, in the 1950s, Hollywood was really big on producing western films. They were very popular. So the Italian film producers saw the dollars involved, so in the 1960s they started making westerns too. Hence the name spaghetti westerns. The one that sort of got the ball rolling was a film starring Clint Eastwood and directed by Sergio Leone, and it was called A Fistful of Dollars. And it's basically Clint Eastwood character was basically playing off between two rival gangs and making money off both of them, basically. That was a really big commercial success, particularly outside of Italy and outside of Europe, so they made another movie called For a Few Dollars More, and this also featured Lee Van Cleef, who's a big Western star when you look at the great Westerns that have been made over the years. And they also made a third movie because this was, again, commercially successful, and that's one of the best movies ever made, which is The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. I'll mention a couple other films if you're interested in checking them out. Another one that was commercially successful was called Django. And because it was so successful and Italian intellectual property laws are pretty lax, is that it seemed like everybody made a movie with Django in the title, even though it had nothing to do with the original movie. Even Quentin Tarantino made a Django movie, and again, nothing to do with the original. And the last one I'll mention, there were some Western comedies that were made which featured Terence Hill and Bud Spencer, not their actual names because they had Italian names, obviously. So if you're interested in checking out some great Italian films, those are the recommendations. But this is Lean Agile Systems Thinking Conference, so I'd like to talk about spaghetti diagrams. So have you guys heard of spaghetti diagrams before? Great, all right. So they're actually a very simple tool, but very powerful. Hi, good timing. You can just grab one of those sheets if you like, they're on the table. So it's just, you've missed the film reviews, but that's all right, you're here for the spaghetti diagrams. So it's basically a tool that you use to analyse a process. It's particularly good for unstructured processes or where there aren't standardised processes or where you might have a standard process but there's a lot of variance. And it's a way to visualise it. So the key elements in the diagrams is that you have a layout of the workspace. So typically this is used in an environment where the work is physical, such as a manufacturing environment. So you might have a floor plan of the factory and so forth. And once you've got that, then what you want to do is you want to represent the flow of work. So typically this will be the movement of people, so the workers, or it might be an individual worker, the movement of materials, so if you're constructing some goods, and also the flow of information. Okay, so in the diagram that you can see above, I used blue to represent the movement of the worker. Red was represented to show the movement of the materials because they were assembling, I think it was something like a ladder or something like that. And the green was information. So in this case it was like a printed work instruction of how to assemble the particular product that they were making. You could also, if you wanted to, represent other things that may be important, such as movement of tools or machinery and so forth. So what I'll do, because it really is, although it's very powerful, it's very elementary, is I've prepared or cooked up an example for you, and basically this will go for about 3 minutes, and you'll see me actually going through the creation of a spaghetti diagram. Just bear in mind with this one, because I wanted to make sure you could see it on the screen, I've used a Sharpie, so there's a little bit of detail that I would normally capture, which I couldn't just because it was a thicker pen. Okay, here we go. So and this layout's the same as the paper that you've got, so you can just watch for now. And in this example, you can see the blue represents me moving around the workspace, and the red is basically the stuff I need And this is quite a poor process because obviously I went to the cutlery drawer, it wasn't there, I had to go to the dishwasher. So this is just making dessert for my kids. So it's just yogurt, walnuts and strawberries. So you can see there I went for the walnuts and it was empty, so I've gone for the chocolate powder instead. So yeah, so that's basically what we get at the end of the process. So hence, that's why it's called a spaghetti diagram, because it looks like spaghetti. As I said, there's a little bit of detail that I would normally add, because you put little arrows as you go, so you know the direction of the movement. You can number the lines, so you know the sequence and stuff like that. But that's kind of it. That's how we do it. So yeah, obviously this is a pretty poor process. So what did you see in the process? What do you think we can improve? Yeah, and you can see that, like for example, because like the top left-hand corner is like my workspace, and look how many times we come here, and we can see it very clearly. Same with the fridge. Okay, what else? What else do we see?
Going to one place and then back again for we do once again do
Yep.
two things at the same time. Putting something in the bin and returning something to the fridge.
Yep. So obviously, if you're familiar with lean and the wastes of lean, is it we can reflect on those. So who's familiar with the wastes in lean? So we've got a few who do, a few don't. So there are 7 classic wastes, and they've sort of been extended to 8 and 9. The easiest way to remember is an acronym called downtime. I don't think I've got a whiteboard marker, but if you remember the acronym downtime, it's the wastes are defects, overproduction, waiting, transport, which is the movement of things. Sorry, I missed N, which is non-utilised talent. Transport, inventory. Motion, which is the movement of people. And extra processing, so like doing more than I need to do. So when you're going through this and observing, some of those, if you keep those in the back of your mind, you'll very evidently see it, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of motion going back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. So any other observations that you can see where there's improvements or waste that you saw?
Yep. Suppose you went to the drawer and the dishwasher because you didn't know what was in what.
Yep. And yeah, so I went there and I think I was looking for a spoon, and there was no spoon. I had to go somewhere else. Obviously, there's waste there. Okay, and yep. So inventory problem or communication issues. So very rudimentary. So you saw how we do the diagrams. So now what we're going to do is I've applied a little bit of Kaizen on the process that we've just seen. So I'm going to kick off a second video, and what you guys can do, assuming you've got pens, is that you can draw your own spaghetti diagram as you go. Now, if you want to, you can just, because it's your first time and you may not have a lot of pens and it's actually a pain swapping pens and stuff like that, you could just map my movements and not worry about the movements of things and stuff like that. Okay, cool. So, are you guys ready? All right, I'll kick off the video. You can see I'm not moving any faster, I'm not working any harder, just working smarter. So how was that for people? But in terms of the process, like was that obviously pretty easy to understand and follow? Obviously, you've got to be quick to keep up with the movements, but any thoughts or impressions?
The items you were using were quite close together, like the chopping board was right there, and the sink was right there. Like you didn't have to walk all over there and get stuff in the sink.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, just those little things about going where you can tell that all of those things that we'd spoken about earlier, there's much less action going towards those places than the diagram. So.
Yeah. So some of the things, like for example, in the first video, I went to the drawer and the spoon wasn't there. Obviously, it was. Second time, I didn't look for the walnuts because I knew it wasn't there. So when you analyse it for the first time, or even the second time, because there'll be improvements on the second video that I showed, is that you can start applying other toolkits within Lean. So you're looking at, because this is a way to identify the issues and make it visible. So, for example, with the spoon missing is a tool that's used a lot in Lean circles is 5S. Has anybody heard of 5S? Yeah. So 5S, it's a management system basically to organise the workspace and keep things organised. So classic is you'll have cutouts. You know, if you keep tools on a wall and hang them, is you'll have like cutouts of where they're supposed to be. So it's very visual to see if things are not following a standard process. And so you're not looking for things. So this will help you identify the opportunities for improvement. So if you were to use this, it's a good idea to think, is it the right tool? Like, it's a great tool and it's very simple, but is it what I need? Because if you have a very standardised process and it's repeated and you don't have a lot of variance, it's probably not the right tool to use. Now think about the audience. So obviously, if you use this, you'll produce your diagram. Is it for your benefit or for other people? Are you going to communicate that with other people? So if you want to talk with workers or managers and things like that, it may differ what you want to capture in the diagram. If you are doing this in the workplace, is that most people don't like to be watched, so it's a good idea to introduce people before you start doing this kind of thing, so you are going to be watching them and following them and even walking around the workforce as they walk around the workspace as well. So make sure that they're comfortable and know what you're doing. This can be used for both quantitative and qualitative analysis. I'd say it's better, as I said, if it's a less structured process. The key thing is the qualitative stuff, because you'll see the observations. It's like, for example, when I've done this, is it you can see on the diagram a lot of back and forward, but if you just look at the diagram, you're not sure why, whereas if you're there, as you can see, okay, the spoon wasn't there. Okay, so what's the insight? So it's not just about the diagram, it's what's the insight, so we can get the improvement. And from a pragmatic point of view, you don't want A4 pieces like I've given you. Get as big as possible, like an A3, get yourself an A3 clipboard. I've read literature that recommends pencils. I'd say use pens because they get blunt very quickly, and when you're busy scribbling you don't want to muck around. And if you've seen those biros with the 4 colours and you can just click, they're really great because you can just click through if you're trying to capture more than just the one thing as you go. So obviously this is really great when you're working in an environment where it's a physical workspace. Whereas I think most people at the conference and maybe those in the room, you more work in a knowledge environment. So if you just want to sort of pair up or huddle up and just have a discussion amongst yourselves about like how would you see this kind of tool working within your workspace. So I'll just give you guys a few minutes just to have a chat. Hi. That's all right. Steve. Cool. Were you just wanting to jump in and see the presentation, or? No. Or are you getting it early? Okay.
I was just.
That's all right. That's all right. My one's pretty quick, so we're just going to have a chat and that's a wrap up. So, how are we going for time?
Oh yeah, you've got loads. I was just being super.
Oh yeah, because I thought it ran for 15 minutes. So.
Yeah, mine was for about. It's really hard to gauge sometimes.
Yeah, if you haven't done it before. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I have video content in my presentation. I knew how long that ran for, and I'm not talking very much because it's a very simple thing that I'm covering.
What was yours on?
It's called spaghetti diagrams.
Oh, okay.
So nobody's ever heard of it, but they're really cool. Mainly for physical work environments, but you're drawing movement and the flow of work. And so you can visualise the flow of work, and through that you can get insights how to improve the process. Yeah, like for example, if I'm moving around the room, like I'll show you this. I can show you at the end if you like, just my presentation, but it's like you have like a floor plan of your workspace and then you're basically drawing the movement.
We were trying to do something similar. We've been looking at a book called Tribal Leadership, and we've been trying to look at how can we show how different tribes are forming and what the connection is between people, and rather than a physical environment, how those interactions between different people. That's cool.
Yeah.
You've the talks finished, is it?
Yeah, we'll basically have a conversation at the end.
Oh, right.
I could almost do it twice in half an hour. It's very short.
Oh, okay. What's the general? I missed that because I was talking to some lean.
Okay.
David.
Yeah, so basically it's covering spaghetti diagrams.
Yeah.
I can have a chat straight after this if you're not looking at anything or catch me out.
Oh, if you do what you need to do, yeah.
Yeah, so basically it's a tool to visualise the process. So you normally it's used in a physical workplace where you've got physical stuff, and so you basically have a floor plan and you draw movements of the flow of work. So typically, if I'm moving around the kitchen, I draw where my movements are. I can use a different colour to show the movement of things, like the raw materials, and other things like informational tools and stuff like that.
Like just the flowing line?
Yeah, it's just you just draw. Like if I walk from here to here, I draw a line. If I walk to the fridge, I draw a line.
And what's the benefit of this? Like, do you then put measurements in that?
It's more beneficial to get qualitative insights so that you can visualise where there are improvements, and just by watching the process, as you'll see, because at the end you'll have the diagram and you go, okay, why are we back and forth, back and forth, back and forward?
Got it.
And because you're actually watching it, you'll get those insights.
Got it.
And that way you can start looking at process improvement.
So this is almost like a physical floor plan layout, like a phase 3 map. Phase 3 mapping, but for a physical floor plan, like working out this is a flow of work in a stream, and measuring the time taken between each step, and how I can shift it or change the sequencing.
If you wanted to, you could measure time and distance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it depends how standardised the process is. So if you've got a very standard process with little variance and you're just looking to improve it, this is probably not the right tool. Where if it's more unstructured,
more structured?
If it's less structured, or there's more variance,
like working in a kitchen. This sounds like if you're in a restaurant.
Well, if you're in a restaurant and you churn out the same food night after night, you may standardise. You might be able to easily make if you're making chicken parmas every night.
Yeah.
And you focus on having a standard process. Then you can do that. Whereas if it's like a custom menu, then it's going to change in terms of what ingredients you need and stuff like that.
And where would you apply this? Like, what's some examples of? Are we being recorded, by the way?
Yeah, we are, but that's all right because this is a chat piece.
Will this be played back on the website?
Yeah. No swearing. This is best in where the workplace is physical work, but what we're having now is a conversation to say how would we apply it in their own work context, which may not be, might be a knowledge environment. Okay. All right. So thoughts? How can we apply it in your context? I assume nobody's working in a manufacturing environment or anything like that, so we'll start with this group.
Yeah, so we kind of covered off a couple of elements for it, and from my perspective I was looking at how you could potentially use something like this to look at opportunities to speed up delivery of software or knowledge type work, which you could map out the teams rather than it being physical workspaces. It might be kind of logical groupings of people or teams or whatever it is, but also calling out backlogs as well, because a lot of our stuff sometimes will sit in a Jira backlog or whatever it is before the team picks it up, and you'd want to differentiate between the team and it's just sitting on their backlog waiting for them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So instead of having the physical floor plan, you might have, I guess, a way to represent the different teams or the different backlogs and show the flow of work. For example, if it goes from a product manager to a backlog to a BA or a UX person, and then it goes to a developer and back and forward and clarifications and stuff like that. Yeah.
We also talked about using it as a bit of a tool to analyse like a scenario that's gone wrong or a defect or something like that to map out the process that led to that point where you had the failure.
Cool. All right. This group?
Similar, but has it like development, and say a group of developers, one person's working on one thing and someone else is working on something else, and then a week later they kind of swap the code base, and then that person has to get used to the new code base. So it's kind of like almost mapping who's working on what and how long it takes to refocus on like a new task when it might be quite similar to something you've done a week ago, but someone else has done it.
Yep. Yeah, no, actually it's interesting because this, from my experience, I've worked extensively as a software developer and a business analyst. I know from a business analyst perspective, there's often a lot of to and froing in terms of verifying and validating requirements and just mapping how often that happens and with which stakeholders and with the software side of things is you could potentially, this just came to me now, is, for example, if you work in a Linux environment and you're using like just a basic text editor, is you could just look at your history and see which files you're opening, and if you're going back and forward, different, maybe functions or libraries and stuff like that, and you can just map, well, which ones am I going between when I'm making my software update. So, cool. Well,
see, so also when you're working in current systems, current processes and stuff, like sometimes you need to find efficiencies in there, but trying to create that value stream map can be very hard when you're working in such a subjective understanding of what is that system actually doing, whether that is processes within your team, whether that is actually looking at a delivery, whatever that might be. It's a really great tool to gather data or gather the information that you need to slot into that.
Absolutely.
So for me, this is a really great tool to gather. It's the gathering of the data to then do the analysis.
Exactly.
Which is really quite handy.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I've done value stream mapping work previously, and it's really only good if you have a standard process or a fairly predictable process. If it's unstructured and things are happening in different orders, it's not appropriate, and this is maybe the tool to use to get to the point where you've got less variance in your process. Okay.
Or even just understanding the process if you're not familiar with it.
That's right.
To be able to go in and quickly do something like this, it's much simpler than a value stream map. You can do this as a start and then go, okay, this is stuff I can plug into the next stage.
That this now gives me the information to be able to create a value stream map.
I know who you're going to ask about this.
That's right. I know who I need to look at. I know who I need to observe, or I know what I need to observe, but I have no idea what order this is. And let's face it, people don't do things in steps, right? They come back, as you saw, you go to the drawer 50 times, you go to the fridge 60 times, etc. But you might not know that, and some people do that in different orders. Yep. But at least it gives you the components to slot into the value stream map.
Absolutely. And it really depends on the maturity of your process. Because if you're on a Toyota production line, it's absolutely, basically to centimetre or to the second kind of thing. Whereas a lot of the processes that we use probably aren't to that standard level of standardisation, because we're not churning out the same thing over and over again. Cool. One other thing, example that is kind of related that you could use it, is if you're in a meeting and you wanted to see the flow of conversation, is you could just draw lines between the people, draw them around the table. So yeah. So thanks. I hope you got value out of that.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.
That last one was also